All right. Hello, everyone. Again, thank you for typing the experimentation breakout room. And I want to introduce our brilliant guest, Dylan Lewis. Dylan leads the experimentation team at Atlassian, and recently Atlassian won the Experimentation Culture Award 2025, which is very impressive. And today he's going to share more about how to run scaled experiment at Atlassian. And just for context, Atlassian is a static customer, and I always enjoy working with Dylan because he always gives us these great suggestions to make our product better. Definitely one of our favorite customers. So I will hand it to Dylan.
Hey, everyone. That's a really great way to say that I complain a lot. So I appreciate that. So I am very loud and specific about the feedback. Is there anyone from Atlassian here in the room? No? Oh, you should go to another room. I'll give you this. I will give you this talk in person if you want to. I'm not kidding. There's two. I want to go to the other room, but it's fine. So my name's Dylan. I work at Atlassian. I've been here 5 years almost. Prior to that, I was at Intuit for 15 years. Now, many of you in the Bay Area look at that and say, that's a really long time. I'm based in San Diego, right? And so there isn't a lot of tech in San Diego, so I'm kind of stuck with where I am. But if any of you have been to San Diego, it's pretty flippin' amazing. So shout out to San Diego. So, hey, I'm going to talk today about experimentation. You are all already converted, which is great. I am going to tell you one thing, though. It's flipping hard, isn't it? So to get your companies to do experimentation, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. You heard the person who was up here before from DoorDash who talked about how easy it is to actually build an experimentation platform in-house. I've done that at Intuit multiple times. It's flipping hard. And it's really hard. And so now we use we're a StatSig customer, and we're using StatSig in order to be able to make it so that that piece is very well taken care of, but the culture piece is actually the really, really hard part. So this tooling is good. Stats, those have been figured out for years, right? 100 years. We've had Fisher t-tests and things like that. And so the culture part is the part that's actually the most difficult. So, No, it's fine. So when I started there, we ran 50 experiments. So I was there for 3 years, and we ran 50 experiments every single year. That's it at Atlassian, 50. How many of you use Atlassian products? I would say probably almost everyone. And if you don't, let me know why. So we ran 50 experiments every single year. And that was a little bit troublesome for me. Coming from Intuit, where we had 400 live when I left that same day that I left, coming there and I asked, how many experiments are live today? And nobody knew because didn't really track that, didn't really have a culture of experimentation, which is a big problem. So is this going to work or not going to work? All right. So first thing we did was we standardized on a hypothesis. So very, very simple. If we do this, then this will happen because we know this, and the success metric is going to be this thing. It's like Mad Libs for product managers. Very, very simple, easy to do, right? And so everybody can fill it out. That was the first thing that I did. You can see there's 2.1 thousand people that have seen this page. And we still don't quite get it right. So I learned a hypothesis for today. So I'm going to talk about the 24 different things that we did at Atlassian over the last few years. And hopefully you can take one or two of those away and reach out to me on LinkedIn and tell me what worked and what didn't work. Just a click away. You can just message me if you want to. Happy to talk to you about what worked here. So again, 50 experiments, FY23 fiscal year. You can kind of see from the scale where we're going. So that's good. But let's talk about how we got there. So when I started, there were 3 things that I think were really important to notice. So number one, we were built on top of a feature flagging tool. There's a thing called Switcheroo, which is really our control plane on top of this feature flagging tool. And that tool was feature flagged first, right? So didn't really think about experimentation. I think you can figure out which one that was. Every single experiment that we ran was hand analyzed by a data scientist, every single one. And each data scientist would do it slightly differently. It was, problematic. I'll say that. So, and the last thing there really wasn't a culture of experimentation. In fact, we asked teams, hey, if we made Switcheroo better, would you be more likely to experiment? And they said, nope, not at all. No, you could put all the money you want to in that. You could put all the teams you want to against that, but they wouldn't do it. And that's, as an internal team that actually owns the experimentation platform, that's problematic for sure. So if we were a ship it culture, you build it, you ship it. And I had Ronnie Kohavi come in and talk, and everyone was like, 20 people reached out to me and said, hey, this is amazing. I can't believe we're going to start doing experimentation. And the next day, everything was exactly the same. So problematic for sure. So in FY24, everything changed. I like to call this the year we got adult supervision. We have a new CTO that came in from Meta. He was Microsoft prior to that, so had known and understood how experimentation worked. Came in and actually hired quite a few engineering leaders from Meta as well. And they all knew how experimentation would work and how impactful it is to be able to launch, release something, and then get immediate feedback from customers. That is not where we were at. This is actually a very different time for us. And so we partnered with StatSig, and we made a goal to launch 500 experiments that year, right? So we went from 50 to 500, 10x, huge change. And the goal really was just to implement it and get it out there. And as I said, we partnered with StatSig, and so we actually, it's Deltoid, it's Meta, it's all, you have all been sold on that. And the other thing that we did was we actually made it so that we had a scalable metrics platform. That was the most important thing, because that was the thing that we actually couldn't do internally with our existing switcheroo platform. That was the piece that I think that was the critical component here, is to be able to scale those analytics and measurement from the data scientist perspective. Again, hand rolling every single notebook and every single experiment, problematic for sure. So this is the early box diagram from an architect. You can tell there's boxes and colors, which is good. But we actually integrated the control plane of switcheroo with StatSig. And so we're using a hybrid platform. We're not actually building our own anymore. We're actually taking the easy parts, or the parts that can be commoditized, and putting it underneath switcheroo. So we have that control plane, so that when we release something, we make it so that the people follow those particular rules. When people, create experiment, they actually have to go through switcheroo in order to be able to do that. And so we make it so that people have to follow a particular flow in order to be able to make it so they go from idea to experiment to decision. So we have that control plane on top of it. There we go. So we started a stale flag initiative. So you can imagine you have feature flags that are existing in your companies, and so we actually went from in just 3 months we went to 4,200 feature flags that were removed, and got people really thinking about, hey, this is something this is the life cycle that we have to believe in order to be able to make it so that, hey, you launch something and you don't just leave it there. We had flags from 7 or 8 years old. It's just not good, right? So got people to really think about, what it is that's existing inside the code base and how to get those things cleaned up, which is a good thing. We also tracked our progress. So this is our first Tableau dashboard for experimentation. You can see we're managing the program here. We've got the average runtime for completed experiments, 28 days is the goal, and we were at 30. You can see our goal to get to 500 there. The experiment volume by product. So we had people have basically a scorecard so they could look at what other products were doing and get competitive about it, which is kind of cool. And a number of experiments that we're launching all the time. And so at this point, we had 46 that were currently active, 15 completed, and 2 that were abandoned. And that was just in Q1. So we already surpassed the prior year, which is amazing. So just in 1 quarter, we were able to do that just because of having that support and the drive to do that. So we also created a program called Top Line Metric Program. And so the goal here was to work with data scientists and data engineers in order to be able to get those metrics into StatSig. And so we gave ourselves 2 months to do this. We got to 50 metrics. Really what this allowed us to do was to find those metrics that were important for the business and get them out of data scientists' notebooks and get them into a pipeline and get them into the product so that people could use them. Really, really important to get those out of there. As people leave, everybody leaves the company, right? As people leave the company, you sometimes find out that this metric that they owned at one point 4 years ago is still being built by a notebook that's still running, which is a problem when they leave. Nobody actually is taking care of it. So this actually got them and made so that we productionized the metrics that were available inside of StatSig. So really good program for us because it actually got data engineers into the metric pipeline. Prior to that, we just had data scientists building everything out. So we also built a thing called the Experiment Champion Program. So these are engineers that would be deployed within their particular product group so that they would actually be the ones that would be the people that would champion experimentation practices They rated their own groups. They figured out what was actually working and what wasn't working, and they helped elevate those capabilities. So they went from crawl, walk to run within their teams, and started out with the growth team, the ones that were experimenting the most. And so if you really want to read about this, there's Lucas Vermeer does a really good 3-part blog post about this, and that's where I stole it from, and hopefully you'll steal this from some of us. We also created a program of bar raisers. So anybody who had run more than 100 experiments was nominated to be a bar raiser. And so those people were there in order to be able to help other teams elevate their experimentation practices. So how many of you have run more than 100 experiments? Right. That's about, yeah, okay. So, 5 or 6 of you maybe? And that's basically what it is for us too. A very, very small number of people that were able to elevate the practice of experimentation. And that was done mostly through experiment reviews. So people can bring their experiments, they fill out this form, and they come to an experiment review. Very simple. What's your hypothesis? Share your post-analysis or your pre-analysis. What was the design of the experiment? And when did you launch it? And how long was it supposed to run? And your metrics. And so people would fill out this Confluence page, and they would actually, as part of the agenda for every single experiment review. I sit at about 3 hours experiment reviews every single week to help elevate the practice of experimentation within Confluence. Within Atlassian. So, but funny thing happened. So we got to 150 experiment reviews, and we looked back and we saw exactly what happened inside of those experiment reviews. And about 20% of them, people brought their experiments into the experiment review, and 20% of them actually walked out with a different decision. And so many times it was don't ship that, but even sometimes it was ship that, which is really interesting, right? So you have teams that are coming in, they have an idea about what they're going to do, and they're actually walking away with something different. Statsig has a blog post on their site that talks about how experiment reviews are much like how calibration is for employees, right? So you learn about how to calibrate and how to be a good manager by doing those calibration reviews. You learn about how to be a good experimenter by going to these experiment reviews. So if you go to multiple of them, and we have people that show up just to hear what's going on, so they can become better experimenters. So really, really important for us, at least, to help elevate the culture of experimentation by having these experiment reviews. So we also created a wiki. Look at that, Confluence, a wiki. And so we have one central place where everybody can come and learn about experimentation, which is great. And took a lot of the great things that were happening around in different teams and brought them all into one place. The day we launched that, somebody else launched another wiki that was a competitor to this. It's like standards for coding. But we have one place. So we encourage them to move over as well. So really important. Took us at least 3 or 4 months and multiple people to create the wiki. But it has all the components of how to run a great experiment. We also scaled data science. So we created a program called Data Champions, so very similar to Engineering Champions. And this was basically to help teams take on data science work. So how do we help engineers actually do data science? There was a lot of pushback. The engineers don't want to do data science. It's fine. Okay, we try to make it as easy as possible. We have training. We have different skills that they actually have to learn. And then we actually tracked what skills did they actually learn, and did they demonstrate those skills? And you can see here, this is across multiple different teams. You can see there's some people that didn't quite do everything, but most people did, right? And so they demonstrated that skill. And so we actually tracked who was doing what in order to be able to understand how they were progressing from crawl to walk to run. We also did an experiment for our mascot, right? So we had 2 different stickers here, and the goal was to make it so that we would give the sticker. We would ask people, which sticker do you want to have on your laptop, right? And so whichever sticker we ran out of first was the one that became our mascot, right? And so we had 200 of these stickers, and we ran out of one first. But the better thing is that we have 170 different laptops with our sticker on it to remind people about experimentation, which is awesome. And so the winner actually was, which one do you think it is? Option A?
Option B.
B? Option B? Okay. Wow.
Why that's not accurate?
This isn't my laptop. This is their laptop. So it was actually option A. So
Good.
me too. Option B was my favorite too, by the way. So thank you to Meta for helping me make a sticker, which is awesome. Do appreciate that. But so it was option A. And so we had lots of people that actually preferred that one over B, which unfortunately I like B or 2. But again, you launch an experiment. It's not the one you want. It's not the child you want. Sorry, that's the wrong thing. Sorry. It's not the one that you want to win, and it actually is something different. So option A was the one that won. So both of them say no YOLO. We have an engineering leader our engineering architect for the experimentation platform. He says people just YOLO stuff all the time. They don't ever measure it, and so our mascot is no YOLO. So you don't just YOLO things out there. So it's weird. We also did some analysis about our experimentation program. So this is an analysis of why why our experiments are out there for a very long time. And so this data scientist, brilliant guy, came back and said, well, there's no MDE determined ahead of time. So he will just put experiments out there. They didn't really care about when it was going to end, and they're long running experiments. And so 120 days long. There's one that's live right now that's been up for 500 days. And I keep talking to the person and they're like, I'm not going to leave it. So it's fine. So we did an analysis here. 65% of them actually had no MDE. They had no end date, which is a problem. And this is just in year 1. And so then, we got to 700, which is pretty flippin' amazing, right? We went from 50 to 700. That's absolutely amazing, right? So that scale and that amount of growth in that period of time was just ridiculous. So you can only imagine the quality of those experiments that were launched, going from 50 to 700, and how many people had actually run experiments in the past. Not that great. So in FY25, we call that the migration year. So that was the year that we actually had 5 incredible goals. The first one was to increase the percentage of releases measured by 7x. So as you remember, we were only running 50 experiments. Can you imagine how many things that we were releasing that was actually measured? Probably not that many. So we wanted to increase that by 7x. We wanted to migrate all flags from one tool to StatSig. Also wanted to increase that quality, play with holdouts a little bit, and then also do faster post-analysis. So remember, we have the engineers that are doing the post-analysis. It might be taking a longer time than needed, so we had to scale that up. So the first component of that was having default metrics. So within StatSig, you have the ability to just define which default metrics are there for feature gates and experiments. And so we do that as well. And we made it so that almost everything that went out was able to be measured, which is great because then we were able to achieve our goal. So you can see there Q1, Q2, and then Q4, nice little curve up and to the right. And that next thing that we did was we worked through migrating our flags out of out of our other tool into StatSig, and so you can see the curve goes down and to the right also. So they're almost inverse from one another, which is great. So completely successful with that as well. And then we have an experiment quality scorecard that we developed. So you can see 8 different things up there. Again, the hypothesis showed up, right? So we're still trying to push the hypothesis standard here. And one of the things that the tenet that we have there is track it, train it, and tool it. So what we did was we actually were tracking how well people were formulating the hypothesis to our particular standard, which is great. We trained people. You saw the complex page that in 2020 I built that still we're not building the hypotheses the right way. So we trained it. We continued to train it, and then we tooled it. So when you start an experiment or when you create an experiment, you actually have to enter in the hypothesis, and it has to have that particular standard in that particular format. So if we do this, then this will happen because we know this, and success is defined as this, right? Very, very simple. So now there's tooling in place to make it so that you actually have to use those words in order to be able to go on to create an experiment. The other things that we have up there is, did you actually put a target or sample size in there? So you got a point for each, you got different point levels for each one of these things. And then how fast did you do pre-analysis or post-analysis? What was the duration of the experiment? Did you have any restarts at all? So we want to make sure that we track that and understand because it's a waste, right? And no changes to the metrics, or do you have a holdout? So this quality scorecard was really important for us to be able to measure the growth of our experimentation capability and the quality that we had. It's great for me because I had a Tableau dashboard. I can go on and look at it, but doesn't mean anything for anybody else, right? So a bunch of engineers built out this capability, which is basically a ritual where they could actually go in and query that database and be able to pull back what the score was for every single experiment. And so we call this the experiment operations report. And they built that because they wanted to have a systematic way to evaluate where their experiments were in the life cycle and what the quality of those were. And so they made this capability so that now many teams will meet once a week and do an experiment ops meeting. And so they'll walk through where things are from beginning to end and what's up next and make sure that the experiments have the highest quality possible. So this, as I said before, the other one, I had the Tableau dashboard where I was measuring it, but this actually put the measurement inside of every engineer's hand, which is pretty darn amazing. So we talk about the speed here. And so we really wanted to make it so we got to faster post-analysis. So StatSig has great capabilities for measuring your experiment, but there are still things that we wanted to be able to do outside of that. And so we had to work internally with our data engineers in order to be able to speed up how quickly the data would get into StatSig and how much people could actually, how fast they could actually make their decision. And so we're from enrolled to experiment all the way through the decision, looking at it from each individual point, where can we make that time smaller and smaller and smaller? So a huge, huge effort here. We can now, there are three things that people really wanted to make sure that they were able to do in StatSig. And there was a lot of arguments from teams that they didn't really want to adopt it because it wasn't fast enough. It didn't have the right metrics in it. They couldn't filter out users the right way. And they couldn't dimensionalize the user population. And so we worked with StatSig in order to be able to make those three things happen for us and for Atlassian. So those features are in StatSig now, which is great. And the last thing is we experimented with holdouts as well. So did a little bit of this in 2 years ago, and now we have, or a year ago, excuse me, and now we have holdup programs that are happening, which is pretty darn cool. So we did 1,880 experiments, which is pretty darn amazing, isn't it? From 50, 38x that. That's just huge. That's a huge amount of growth and a huge capability that we've actually delivered across the entire company. We also, as Lynn mentioned, we also won the Experimentation Culture Award. Kelly Wortham and Ton Wessling put these together. And so one of those things that I think I'm very excited to hear, to be able to talk to you about, and also as a great way for us to get the word out there that Atlassian's an experimentation capability as well. And in fact, the person who I just hired saw this and then applied, which is great. So that was my my real goal for getting that out there. So with the acceleration year we're in right now, again, come on, there we go. All right. So again, we have another experiment quality scorecard. You can see the hypothesis standard is still there, right? So we still haven't nailed it. It's funny, engineers realize that we just require those particular words. And so they would actually just put into the form, if we then, because, succeed, in a number, right? That's all they would put in there. And so now we would change the requirement for quality and require 150 characters. And I'm sure that I'm going to get a bunch of hypotheses that are just that printed out till it's 150 times, so maybe 10 or 15 times. So we'll figure that out. So very similar, pre-analysis speed, target or sample size entered there. We've got some other running things that people were doing. So we've got health check failures to make sure that things are running appropriately. No change in the sample size, so you can't go in and do another pre-analysis when you're 2 months into the experiment. The experiment reviewed yesterday. And then no changing the do not change rules. So we have some release strategies that we want to make sure that people adhere to. And so people are changing the rules that say do not change on them. So we want to track that. Engineers, I love engineers. They're amazing. They know quite a lot, and I know better than the people who built this platform. And so I'm going to make the change, and they're changing the rules that say do not change on them. We also look at regrettable resets, and then we also want to make sure those resets are fixed within 2 days, if at all possible. Duration again, and post-analysis speed. 2 other things that we're actually looking at too. And so these are the regrettable restarts, the categories that we have here. So when people actually do a reset, we actually collect it within the tool. We have that tooling in place on top of the experimentation platform, which allows us to have that control plane. So really important for us to be able to get feedback and get that back into the tool and help make experimentation better at Atlassian. And the last thing here is we continue to learn from others as well. So I've talked to some of you here. I really like going to conferences. I think it's great. I get really good ideas. Hopefully you got a couple from this discussion. What's this number?
10.
experiments so far. Currently live experiments.
230.
Well, thanks, Celia. Thank you. The number is 230. That's the number of experiments we launched last month. So we went from 50 to 700 to 1880 to we'll be well over 2400, which is pretty amazing. So I went through 24 things pretty quickly here. I hope you took away a couple of them. Those are all of them. Let's see pictures. I think the slides are distributed afterwards, right? Yeah. Okay. So you guys all get the slides. So, and again, if you want to talk to me about any of this, happy to have a conversation. So I think I was able to at least do the action that's required here. So now I'm going to see if success is actually going to happen over the next 6 months. So hopefully you'll reach back out and I'll learn from each of you. So I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your time. And thank you so much. So it's fun. So we have about 4 minutes or so. So if there's any questions, happy to answer them. Wow. Okay. I think you're I can't judge that. So we'll go over here. Thanks. Lynn's bringing you the mic. Yeah.
So I know Atlassian's mission is to build the seamless collaboration in the workplace. So how do you describe the success after you bring and scale up the experimentation culture? Will you define it in you bring more customer clients or you help them to increase their efficiency in their work?
Yeah. So Atlassian's mission is to unlock the potential of every team. And I feel like experimentation really helped that because people could launch and measure the experiences that they were going out there. And so I think that we actually have better products now than we did before because people actually got that feedback versus just YOLOing it out there, which is what we don't want to do. So,
how did over time as you scaled the experimentation program, how did the percent of experiments that resulted in statistically and practically significant results change? Meaning, I assume in the beginning there's lots of low-hanging fruit, and then it became more difficult over time.
How do I answer that question? So we have lots of experiments that get shipped that aren't statistically significant still, and people are just doing do no harm experiments. And so I would say early on when people start doing experimentation, there are some low-hanging fruit, but there's also a lot of waste, I guess would be to say that. So teams are getting smarter about their experimentation, and I think that we're actually making better decisions now than we were 3 years ago, and we're shipping less features than what we were 3 years ago. So I would say we're getting smarter about each one of those things. I can't pick. So you, Lynn?
Maybe one in the back.
Okay.
I also run an experiment leads program for my company. And one thing that I'm noticing though is that some teams just aren't incentivized to really lean into either quality experiments and they let their engineers do the if then whatever. Or, they just are performative about it, but they don't really actually care about how the experiment's implemented. Are you pushing that from the side on from the ground up, or are you getting leadership buy-in from the top down since you have Meta CTO that helps out with that?
It's top down, right? And so we actually have company level OKRs. The first year was to go 10x. This year, it's about what percentage of your releases are experiments. So we want to get people so they use that as part of their toolbox. And so it's top down. But we have lots of people that really want to do it. We have lots of people that came from other companies that do it, which is amazing. But yes, we do have those people that just fill in the performative stuff. So one more minute, one more question, I think. I'm not picking. Not picking. Yeah, I'm picking. So you can just ask it and I'll repeat it if you want.
The experiment or ritual sound quite ambitious, especially running with so many experiments.
Yep.
I was just wondering, for us, we struggle with this experiments per year, and we're trying to build a narrative that goes into whatever 2 weeks.
Yep.
Do you find that to be a blocker for a requirement?
Interesting point. So it was a requirement for the growth team in order to be able to ship something, the experiment review. And so they would have to come to the experiment review, talk about it, and actually defend their experiment. Now, it can come across as like you're up against a bunch of judges and you have to go to the Supreme Court, which is not what we want it to be by any stretch of the imagination. But we do see that people struggle with coming in and making sure that they're able to defend that particular piece. And it is a bit of a blocker in some cases, but for many people that have done it 2 or 3 times, they can come in and we can go through their experiment in under 10 minutes, which is pretty amazing. So people that repeat it again and again and again, and they learn how to do it, very, very simple. Here's my hypothesis. Here's the experience change. Here's the data. Here's the discussion. And here's what I want to go do. Very, very simple narrative. Very, very easy for people to do. So unless it's like a dicey experiment where like, oh, we have 2 performance things that went bad, and then we actually saw a lift where we wanted to see it, then we have a bit more of a discussion. Did you really look all this? So thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. Hope you got something out of this. Again, I'm on LinkedIn. Just reach out if you want to. I'm happy to discuss, and I hope 2 or 3 of you do come back and tell me what you actually implemented. So thank you all.